This is the last part of our video on factoring by decomposition with negative numbers. And we are down to example C, which is asking us to factor 6y squared minus 3y plus 1. So I see that it has three terms. We have y squared, y, and a number, which is the perfect format for graphing by decomposition. So we want to take that middle term, negative 5y, and decompose it to figure out what the two terms were that we added or subtracted together to get 5y. Actually, minus 5y. All right, there is a clue hidden in the question, and that comes from the first term and the last term. If I multiply those together, 6 times 1 is 6. So we are trying to find the two like terms that we added together to get negative 5y, or just negative 5. And our clue is that they have to multiply to 6. All right, we're looking for things that multiply to 6. So if I consult my multiplication grid, we have 1 and 6. If I do 1 plus 6, that's 7. And if I subtract them, I would get 5, which is what we're looking for. So we're going to try that. So I'm going to do 1 and 6. Now, in order to make it a negative 5, I would have to subtract 1 and 6. And the bigger number to get a negative would have to be negative. So 1 take away 6 gives me 5. But if I check, and it's always good to check, 1 times negative 6 is actually negative 6, not positive 6, meaning these are not the right numbers. So I'm going to look to see if there's anything else that would multiply to 6 and potentially add to 5. So 1 and 6 didn't work out. What else do we have? There's another 6 here. So 2 and 3. 2 times 3 also makes 6. 2 plus 3 is 5. And then if I subtract, I would get 1. So it is another option to give me a 5. So let's see if we can make that work instead. If I do 2 and 3. In order to make a negative 5, I'd have to add these together. They'd both have to be negative to be able to add together and give me a negative answer. So I'd have to do negative 2 and negative 3. And then if I check this time, negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. So there are some numbers. You'll notice it happened earlier when we had 30, that there were numbers that sometimes look like they would add to the same thing. Usually it's things that are multiples of 3 that you sometimes have to watch out for. So 6, 12, 30, sometimes they can give you a little bit of trouble. But just always just double check that they multiply to give us the right sign. All right, so the two terms that gave me negative 5y would be negative 2y and negative 3y. Does it matter which one goes first? No. I think I'm going to put the 2 first and then the 3. But it doesn't really matter. So I have 6y squared minus 2y minus 3y plus 1. From here, we are going to pair them off and group and factor. So I'm going to focus first on the 6y squared minus 2y. I am looking for numbers that would divide evenly into both 6 and 2. So if I look at my multiplication grid, I notice that 6 and 2 both show up in the row for 1, so they would both divide by 1. They also both show up in the row for 2, so they would divide by 2, and then I don't see them again after that. So I'm going to say their greatest common factor is a 2. I also notice they both have y's, so I'm also going to take a y. So I'm going to say that our greatest common factor is 2y. Then I just need to divide 6y squared by 2y. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Y squared divided by y, there's 2 y's being multiplied. We're dividing one of them out. There's still one left behind. And then negative 2y divided by 2y. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. and then y divided by y, we had a y, we divided it out, so it's not there anymore. The sign that goes in between is always the sign that's in between our brackets, which in this case is a minus sign. And then I'm going to look at 3y and 1. The only place I see 3 and 1 together is in the row for 1. So we are going to say that our common factor here is a 1. And it's actually, because of that minus sign, a negative 1. Okay, so we're going to take negative 3y and divide by not just 1, but negative 1. So negative 3 divided by negative 1 is 3. There's a y. We didn't do anything with it, so it stays a y. Positive 1 divided by negative 1. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then 1 divided by 1 is 1. If you have issues with integers, just use your calculator. Okay, I noticed, and I'm happy to see it, that these two brackets match, which tells me that my original multiplication question, the second bracket would have been a 3y minus 1, and then its first bracket would be 2y minus 1. So the multiplication question that gives us 6y squared minus 5y plus 1 is 2y minus 1 times 3y minus 1. All right, there are practice questions on the back side of that sheet for you to work on. Good luck.